And now I want to introduce Lauren Mckeaney. She helped organize this party. She founded Picking Me Foundation. She's going to talk to you guys. Come on up, Lauren. Put your hands together.
I'd like to share with you a story that I've never really told and talked about in public. And I hope it sheds some light on what dermatillomania is and the struggle that people with BFRBs go through. So, pick a color, pick a date, pick a card, any card. The mere mention of the word pink used to make me cringe. As an avid writer, stand-up comedian, filmmaker, and gregarious individual, storytelling is in my nature. But there was one story that I never wanted to tell. I've compulsively picked my skin for well over 2 decades. I'm scarred head to toe, and I've spent a majority of my formative years doing anything and everything I could to keep anyone from looking too closely or asking too many questions. My skin picking disorder, or as I came to know it, dermatillomania, was my shameful, confusing, unstoppable, dirty little secret that not only shaped and defined my skin, but crafted a myriad of falsehoods and interpretations of my life experiences. If you were to tell me a year ago that I would transition from being a silent sufferer to creating and running my own nonprofit advocating for the same disorder, I'd ask if you felt feverish. But here we are. This is a story of identity and personal growth, the self-esteem it takes to accept and live with the mental illness, and how choosing yourself over the disorder that chose you is the ultimate freedom. This is how I'm picking me over my BFRB. Mental illness is often referred to as an invisible illness, except my scar and sore riddled body renders it readable like Braille. Skin picking has been the constant in my life. Flipping through old photo albums and seeing my 6-year-old self speckled in red dots reminds me of an old babysitter commenting on how I was that kid whose mosquito bites lasted summer through winter. Around that age, I became aware that my skin, and rather my behavior with my skin, was different. Letters home from summer camp trumpeted my frustration, reading, "Mom, I hate this. It's not fair. I have 52 mosquito bites, and now I'll have 52 scars. Send stamps, Lauren." Followed by a letter sent home the very next day, only stating, 53, Lauren. My first memory of satisfaction with picking was at camp as well. I remember wearing sweatpants the whole time, partly to avoid catty comments on my sores, and partly because the sensation I got from letting the fuzzy material adhere to the scabs enhanced an internal and physical gratification I felt when picking them off. At times, my fingers seemed to have a mind of their own, roaming my body and picking off what didn't belong. Something foreign would seem to be in control of me, and I was scared to express that. My parents' concern only grew as they tried everything they could to deter my picking to no avail. They clipped my fingers to stubs, covered my hands in Vaseline and gloves, even covered my entire body with 50-count boxes of circular Band-Aids. My mom tried endlessly to seek out help from every type of treatment. Prestigious PhDs, hypnotists, psychiatrists, dermatologists, herbalists, witch doctors, therapists, acupuncturists, even a coworker's neighbor's great-grandmother who has a remedy guaranteed to cure any ailment. But nothing worked. My family meant well in their efforts, but in my mind, all that I existed as was something that needed to be fixed. An appearance-infatuated society offered next-level ostracizing with my skin picking as I grew up in the 2000s. Kids at Space Camp held my arms down to connect the dots, the sores, on me to make constellations. Words like gross and leper were favorite of bullies. I started carrying concealer with me everywhere. Sleepovers required extra precaution. To visit, I packed Band-Aids and full-length PJs in case they had white sheets and I picked in my sleeve. When at home, I played up how cool my black bed sheets were and hid my Band-Aids and gloves before jokes could be made. Once my middle school nurse grabbed me during study hall to publicly interrogate me on why I wasn't taking care of the infected sores she pointed out on my ankles. I never wore shorts to school again. In high school, I heard a rumor that I was self-harming, which was news to me. A college counselor pulled me in his office junior year after receiving a tip from a concerned classmate that the marks on my body were from a drug addiction. By now, however, I knew how to handle this, and I just smiled, laughed it off on how I had chiggers or a rash or the chicken pox or whatever I could pull out of my Rolodex of reason that day for my offending condition. In fact, part of my ingrained behavior with skin picking became misdirection. And with sufficient confidence and an answer for everything, I really was able to appear fine and flourishing. The problem was I was losing my grasp on my identity, along with any measure of self-love. Yet still, I became this master of deflection, rewriting my life events to ward off picking questions and ready with whatever reason I needed to give to change the subject. A summer in Tanzania became my explanation for where all those pesky mosquito bite scars came from, but not where I accomplished summiting Mount Kilimanjaro. Once in a locker room, I profusely assured a health club manager that I was not contagious. It was an allergic reaction, and I was sorry for making the other members uncomfortable before I went and cried in the shower. My college thought a hospital stay was from an asthma attack when really I had cellulitis from picking and was on IV antibiotics. Often I'd be dressed and out the door to work only to see my arm bleeding through my shirt and then heading back up to change while thinking of an excuse this time for being late. My dating life, friendships, family, social life, intimacy, career, everything was affected by the front I put forth to not have to explain what I could not explain. I experienced all of the shame, hiding, and hampering of my self-growth while concurrently battling relentless picking compulsions. Sometimes I'd lose 3 hours in a day, stuck in a mirror, compelled to fix and finish what I had begun picking at. I'd have bruised elbows from hunching over mirrors for extended periods of time, strained tendons in my fingers from repeatedly squeezing at areas from unnatural angles, and scratch marks and dried blood on my sides when I woke up in the morning. My finger scanning was part of my body language when I talked, picking at areas if I got excited about what I was sharing or equally bored with what was happening around me. Mirrors became tantalizing, almost funhouse-esque. My body seemed to walk over to them on its own, no matter how much my internal voice knew better. Often tiny balls of bloody tissue peppered the bottom of my trash cans and sometimes the floor around them, only with me discovering the battleground I'd left behind the next morning. I felt terrible about myself. And then alas, it seemed like the medical world's caught up with me. I was diagnosed with dermatillomania skin picking disorder in 2013, thanks to the DSM-5's renaming and recognition of the body-focused repetitive behavior, known as excoriation disorder. I had a word, a term. I felt like a human again. After all these years, I received the validation and an explanation. I asked the doctor to say it again, dermatillomania. It was funny to say, but easy enough to break down. Derma, skin, mania, madness, suitable enough. Who was I kidding? I was ecstatic. I wanted a button and a t-shirt and a certificate, all printed with this finally tangible illness on it. I was eager and ready to research everything about it, start some medication, go through the treatment, and finally be cured of this behavior. But no. Devastatingly, I learned how misunderstood, underreported, and underdiagnosed skin picking disorder was. It lacks medical studies, research, funding for treatment, and has no cure. Many professionals had no idea of the medical disorder, but were usually familiar with its sister and similarly named disorder, trichotillomania, which itself only has a slim background in medical research. Worse was absorbing the stigma that the name dermatillomania carried, rendering it a bad habit in the medical world and not something that needed attention and funding. It wasn't viewed as life-pervasive, debilitating, or threatening. I was deflated and defeated all over again. I felt like the medical world gave up on me, and worse, I gave up on myself. In 2014, I was hospitalized for picking an area into an abscess for the 6th time, except on this visit, I contracted the life-taking bacteria MRSA. I spent the next 2 weeks recovering in the hospital after having 8 inches of my inner thigh removed. I left the hospital in a wheelchair, and over the next 3 months, I transitioned from having an embedded vacuum in my thigh worn 24/7 like a purse, to a walker, to physical therapy. And ultimately, I moved to a new city where no one knew my Rolodex of reasons for my dermatillomania. And it was there, in the response to some random stranger's questioning of what had happened to my leg, that I experienced a new compulsion to share the truth. And I haven't shut up since. Owning my dermatillomania made me feel whole, authentically, and vibrantly like myself again. Each time I shared about my BFRB, I started to take control back from the controlling disorder. My self-acceptance grew when I talked about my skin picking, even acknowledging moments I had just done it, which helped me love myself more. Now when I look in the mirror, the pieces of my identity I thought I had lost began to take shape. In this new passion of sharing, I got to know myself as a mental health advocate and truly learned you can't pick your purpose when it picks you. I'm so proud and honored to have you all with me tonight as I roll out my nonprofit, the Picking Me Foundation. Picking Me is dedicated to raising awareness and inspiring acceptance about dermatillomania, skin picking disorder, for sufferers, supporters, and educational communities alike. I hope to change the connotation of the word pick for BFRB sufferers, to help patients and parents understand these behaviors are not their faults, and to educate the medical world on the dire funding dermatillomania needs. Picking Me sends Fiddle Packs full of fidget toys and BFRB information to daycares, preschools, babysitting organizations, in hopes of helping sufferers keep their finger energies off their bodies, while engaging community leaders to start conversations early on. Through social media campaigns and interactive mental health booths, we encourage sufferers to share why they are picking me over their BFRB, helping individuals understand that they are more than their disorder. With each hashtag and story from fellow sufferers and supporters, I understand myself a little bit more and more, and I'll be forever thankful for that and them. Even though my recovery and management is an ongoing journey, I'm happy to say I finally picked me over picking me, and I plan to help those in need do the same.